let's unpack the fight because there's so much to talk about
Yes.
regarding the fight itself. Great fight back and forth. I was saying all week long it was going the distance because they know each other so well. They're two
Mm-hmm.
very good fighters, excellent fighters. I didn't see a finish coming, and in the end, it goes the distance. But there were some really interesting moments. The one big takeaway that a lot of people said in terms of criticism of DC afterwards was he said, "Hey, bring your wrestling shoes," and he didn't do all that much wrestling, at
Yeah.
least from our perspective. Now, obviously, like I was saying all week long, it's a lot easier said than done. You don't just walk up to
Yes.
Stipe and take the guy down, right? Like the guy is able to keep you at bay and all this stuff. What did you think of the wrestling or perhaps lack thereof out of DC? Were you surprised
Yeah.
there were so few takedown attempts, or is there more than meets the eye there?
Well, I mean, I don't want to second guess Daniel. Or he's really smart. He knows why he did what he did, and maybe at some point he'll explain it more depth to us. So in the first round, he does that high, head outside high single, grabs it, dumps him. And Stipe scrambled back up to his feet, and then he had him in for a headlock for a while. And I thought that was a really good sequence because it said, hey, you got to be ready for this. And then off of that was kind of what I expected, also where he would step low and then come up and start swinging, right? And he landed a handful of good punches over, say, the next 5 minutes of the fight. And then obviously at the end of the second round, he got dropped. And then to me, it was like that would have been a great time to go back to your wrestling, to try to get a few takedowns in. We didn't really see that in rounds 3, 4, or 5. And actually saw Stipe do a really good job of getting the underhooks and push. And, when that started in the third round, I thought, okay, well, this is great because Daniel just got rocked in the end of the second. He could just rest and not get beat up too bad, lose the third round and come back hard in the fourth and fifth is what I was hoping would happen. And then in the fourth and fifth, he didn't really try any takedowns. So yeah, I mean, obviously as a spectator, I was frustrated by that. I had a handful of people text me who were also frustrated, but Daniel knows why Daniel did what he did, and I'm not going to second guess it.
Did you score the fight?
People got so mad at me. I was so biased. I was just like praying that the judges were somehow going to see rounds 4 and 5 for Daniel. And I know they're competitive, but yeah, it's probably more likely that Stipe won. I thought the scorecards were interesting because one judge gave him 1, one judge gave him 4, and one judge gave him 1 and 4.
Yeah, they were all over the place.
Yeah.
I scored it first round DC. I feel like there's not a lot of debate to that one. I thought he was 15 seconds away from winning round 2, but ultimately lost round 2, right? Yep. Got dropped. I thought round 3 was easy to score for Stipe.
Agreed.
And we'll get back to round 3 in a second. I thought DC won round 4, and I thought he lost round 5. So I had a 3-2 for Stipe.
So I kind of had it all the way up, and then 5. I think I was just praying and hoping that Daniel won somehow, but I think
it was close. But ultimately, I thought Stipe did the more damage. It was basically a boxing match at that point.
Yeah, well, but Stipe did control the clinch. I mean, I think that was a factor. There was a significant portion of the fifth round. I would guess, without having any numbers in front of me, I would guess it was right around 2 minutes where Stipe was pushing Daniel against the cage. And, what I kind of thought was maybe that Daniel was getting a little rest, will kind of explode off the cage, and then, we'll try to land some hard punches. And he didn't really do that, unfortunately.
In the brief post-fight interview that Daniel gave to Joe Rogan afterwards, he talked about the clinch and how he switched it up with the double underhooks. For those that don't understand that, can you explain what the difference is, like what that adjustment really meant to the fight?
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is, yeah, I hate, Dale's such a good friend. I hate like second guessing a strategy, but he was giving up the one underhook, right? And he should have shut this one down by sealing off and being here. And in MMA, it's really risky for Stipe to try to dig the second underhook, because if he tries digging this one and I'm locked down, then I can come back with an elbow or something and blast him, right? But Stipe was able to get under that second arm and kind of control and then push him against the cage. And getting out of a double underhook is not as simple of a task without giving up a takedown or giving up your back or something. It's relatively difficult. So that was kind of why it took him so long to get off the cage in a lot of the circumstances.
Look, I'm like you. Daniel's my friend. I think people know that now, and we're co-hosts. I don't think. Can I be honest with you right now?
Yeah, of course.
I have never enjoyed a UFC card less than I did on Saturday.
Really?
Oh my God. I had to go to the bathroom multiple times. I mean, I'm here in my house by myself. I'm just being honest. TMI, I don't care. Had to go to the bathroom. Nervous wreck. Hands were sweaty. And it wasn't because I was rooting for him.
Yeah.
I didn't want it. I don't want, knocked out. Like, you just don't want him to get hurt. You don't want this, that.
Sure.
Stipe is the nicest guy. Like, I have
Yeah.
Stipe. You remember we did that trivia thing last year in
Yeah,
Chicago.
in
Stipe was
Chicago,
there. He won. Like, I love Stipe. He's a great fire. How could you not like the guy?
Yeah.
But I didn't enjoy anything about that process.
Wow.
And in the end, it ended up being a great fight. Although there were two moments there that made me kind of like cringe inside. Number one, Daniel eye pokes him. So then you see, because all the people before the fight, oh, eye poke. I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
if he
Yeah.
wins, people are gonna blame it on the eye poke. This is horrible.
Uh-huh.
And then he gets eye poked even worse. And
Yeah.
that's in the third round. And I hated that sequence at the end of the third where he tells Mark Goddard that he got eye poked, and Goddard says to him, go sit down. It was a punch. Now, credit to Mark Goddard, the referee, who's one of the best in the game, afterwards apologized, not only to Daniel in person, but publicly via Twitter. So he got that one wrong. But holy smokes, what a turnaround that was, right? Like, how much stock do you put into the eye poke? Because worth noting, Daniel won the fourth round. The most impressive thing Daniel Cormier may have ever done in his career is not get knocked out in that fourth round, because he couldn't see. Did you see that he was like blindly swinging and trying to like guess where the punch is? And he won that fourth round after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, man, being a referee is a tough job. So
yeah,
I agree. Props to him that he came out and said it. And thankfully it didn't have more effect, because say that happened with, I think, 7 seconds left or something in the third round. I mean, if it happens with 2 minutes left, man, that could ended up a lot different, right? Luckily he had his minute during the break to get his kind of wits about him and realize that, he couldn't really see. I did see some people arguing that his eye was closed from punches before that incident, but I couldn't really tell when I went back to watch it. So either way, obviously Daniel's eye was closed before the fifth round. Yeah, he did a great job landing those punches in the fourth round. But that was, so if we go back to reasons to wrestle, the fact that you can't see punches coming from one side seems like another reason. Like, well, dude, I better grab a hold of this guy and take him down, because I can't see anything coming from this side over here. Which kind of leads you to again say, well, why didn't he try to wrestle him a little bit more there?
Yeah. It was like, I thought for sure at that point, considering how he looked, I thought he was getting knocked out in the fourth just because he couldn't see the punches. Remember, in the second round at the end, Stipe hit him in the left. That's what Dana White was alluding to at the post-fight press conference with that big right hook. I think maybe 30 seconds left in that, or more, in that second round, they might have stopped it, but DC did a great job of hanging on. Kudos to him. And I even thought that third round was by far the worst one. And then it ends with the eye poke. The fact that he was able to survive in the fourth and then win that round, in my opinion, and then almost win in the fifth, is truly amazing. Now, what about that short right that he kept landing? That was the one that he knocked Stipe out with in the first fight. And Stipe, all credit to him, he took those shots repeatedly. I mean, what a chin on Stipe, right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge story. I think Daniel, as many times as he hit him hard, and it was a lot, Stipe's got a hard head because he only wobbled a little bit once, and that was it. Everything else, I don't want to say it looked like he was unfazed, but yeah, it didn't really phase him. So I was really impressed by Stipe's ability to take the punch and kind of stay in there tight with Daniel and get to his underhooks and double underhooks eventually, and then also just, man, not being gun shy. Usually when you get hit that hard, a lot of guys start getting gun shy of being in that tight, and his boxing was so good, and he didn't seem to be all that affected by it.
What about the cruel twist of irony that if Goddard sees the eye poke and asks the doctor to come in the cage, and the doctor comes in the cage at the end of the third and asks Daniel if he can see, and he can't, the fight gets called off. Now, ultimately he loses, right? So but could you imagine if the career would have ended like that?
That would have been terrible. So one of my friends who's an ophthalmologist and also a fight fan was like, they should have stopped the fight. That was terrible. He was obviously couldn't see. And listen, Daniel didn't want to go out that way. Like, that is not a way to end his career. So I think if you asked him, and I'm not going to speak for him, I would say I'm very glad that fight got to end. I'm very glad I got to try to win the fight. Obviously, it sucks that I got eye poked, but I think it would have almost been worse had they ended it at the end of the third round on the eye poke.
Yeah. What about Stipe in the sense that, okay, we talked about the underhooks and that adjustment. We talked about him taking some incredible shots. His hair is fantastic these days. He's very lean. He's rocking the skinny jeans. I mean, Stipe is blossoming right now in front of us.
Is he trying to be a movie star?
I don't know, but he's a very good looking man now with this hair and the glasses and everything. What did he do well in there other than the things, or maybe that was it? Like, what impressed you about what he did in there?
Well, I think we kind of covered it all.
Okay.
We talked about the boxing, right?
Yeah.
His boxing was on point, really good combinations. His wrestling was really good, right? He got up the one time he got taken down. He did a great job of controlling underhooks. And then we talked about how he, never got despite the fact he was getting hit pretty hard, he never got gun shy, right? He stayed right in there and kept landing his own combinations. So man, I thought he just did a great job. And obviously, when you talk about heavyweight goats, we were talking about Daniel, but I think Stipe is at this point the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think it's probably pretty hard to argue against that. And I know what we're talking about later is he's got a lot of fun, in my opinion, fun challengers coming up. And, if he makes it through kind of the murderer's row that might be coming at him over the course of the next, say, 12 to 18 months, I think he's really going to be like way up there on the mountaintop.
Okay, I just want to ask you a couple more things before we get to that discussion. Have you ever been seriously eye poked in a fight, in a match, something like that? Like
Yeah.
that's one of the things that impresses me so much about you guys. How do you do that? If I would be in the corner crying, how do you come back and start fighting? I mean, come on. Did you see that picture? Do you see how deep that thing was?
Yeah, that was gross. So I poked worse in wrestling than MMA, and obviously wrestling, I guess MMA you can call timeout too, right? You can say I got poked, and you get a few minutes, and then it kind of starts coming back. I've never been eye poked so bad that I couldn't see for a really extended period of time, like happened to Daniel. And the only time in an MMA fight, Lyman Good, his whole strategy was to eye gouge me when I was on top of him.
Really?
Yeah. He was a dirt ball. And I remember I got really pissed and I freaking jammed my thumb into his eye because he kept doing it. And then I got warned for it. And I'm like, oh, because every time I would go to pass his guard, my head would be this way and the ref would be over here and he would freaking eye gouge me really hard. And I got pissed and I eye gouged him back. But it didn't really affect for whatever reason, it didn't affect my vision at all.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.